So, funny story, but lately I've been seeing a lot of videos on YouTube, especially in the photography, videography world, that people are using Digicams, really old Digicams from like the early 2000s, small little digital cameras that you wouldn't think people would even want to use because the quality is so terrible. I mean, even back then the quality wasn't that great, so why would people even want to go back and use those? But it's something about the look of the cameras, and it's funny because I've actually had a Digicam this whole time. Like, before this whole trend, before I even saw it starting, I've had one this entire time, and it's this guy right here. It's this little Samsung TL-105, and I've been using it for the last couple years, just taking photos of me and my friends and just little everyday things just for fun, just because I found it and the batteries were dead. You know, I didn't have the original batteries, I didn't have the charger anymore, so I was like, crap. So I went online and I actually found on Amazon they still make batteries for this, or they just started making them again. I have no idea, but it's a company called Wasabi. You can find them a lot of these little Digicams. You can get them online, and you can get batteries for them at the same time. So I think that's pretty cool. So it's almost like this world of old photography on these little old cameras is coming back, and I don't know. I just think that's so cool, especially for today's day and age. We have all this modern technology. Everything looks so super sharp and crisp and clear that honestly we've kind of forgotten what it means to just capture a moment and sort of it have that look of that age that it was taken in. And there's something about shooting with these cameras that really gives your photos that old sort of like 90s or like early 2000s kind of like retro VHS look or film look. You know, some people have said that the Digicams are like the new film photography. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional when it comes to cameras and stuff, but I don't know. I think it's pretty interesting because I think from some of the pictures, and you guys will probably be able to see yourselves, that they do look like they were taken on sort of like a film camera because, well, it's the sensor that's in this thing, and I'll get into that later. But I don't know. This camera is really cool, so I can't wait to, show you guys more about it, basically. And yeah, maybe you guys will fall in love with the idea of taking photos with Digicams and videos too, because they also shoot video. So let's definitely get into it. So surprisingly enough, this camera, with it being 12 years old, this camera actually does have some decent features. It does have some manual settings, and we'll go into a little bit of those. But basically for the camera specs, we've got it's a 12 megapixel CCD type sensor. And CCD, actually, that type of sensor is what gives this camera that more film type look, from what I've learned, because it actually holds more pixels in the actual image. So that is kind of what sets these Digicams apart from the more modern CMOS sensors that are in a lot of cameras nowadays. They're both good, for their own purposes, but I kind of think that this sensor is really cool, and you can see in these pictures that I show you guys that I've taken, they come out really nice. They're not all perfect because it is an old camera and the autofocus is not really that great, but once it does focus, and if you've got a really good shot, I think some of your shots will come out really good. So it is kind of a gamble. So you do have to kind of play around with the settings and really figure out just how to get that right shot that you're looking for, basically. It also has a 4x optical zoom here, Not that much, but you do get a little bit of a zoom distance, and I will say that it's not the greatest at focusing in on subjects when it's fully fully zoomed in. So backing it off the zoom is probably the best bet with this camera. The focal distance is actually not too bad when you're zoomed all the way out, so I would say that you're not really missing out on too much if you can't really zoom in. Alright, let's take a look at the back here. So on the back you can see we're sporting this nice 2.7 inch LCD screen. Very nice, very big for a camera of this size. You can definitely frame your shots in very well using that screen. We've also got some buttons on the back here. We've got this dial here. We've got a couple of settings. Over here you've got your focus settings here. You've got your flash settings, and then you've got your mode and your menu button right here. Below that you've got this little replay button to replay your images and videos that you just took, and then you got this function button, and that's for different things when you're using the menu system. We've also got some buttons up top. You got the power button here that powers it on, and then we also have this button here right next to it that I don't really use very often. It's just for turning on the smart auto function. You're just trying to get to it really quickly. So what also is really cool about this camera is that it does have some manual settings that you can mess around with to get a better image. And what I really like is that you can change the ISO on here. The ISO goes from 80 to 3200, so it doesn't go very high, which means you're not really going to be able to shoot very well in low light. I will say this camera is terrible in low light, terrible, and you'll see that. But it does have a flash. And so the flash does come in handy when you're taking still photos at night. You can also change the white balance settings as well. It's got a few different settings of white balance. You can do daylight. It's got a couple settings for fluorescent lighting, tungsten, so a few different settings, white balance. You cannot change the f-stop or the shutter speed manually, but I find that the camera actually does pretty well with both of those in auto mode. So, really, all I'm really changing is the exposure. There's a little exposure contrast or compensation meter that you can also use. You can change up to 2 stops up or 2 stops down, basically, along with the ISO. So you do get a little bit of control over the exposure of the image. I do find that sometimes the images do come out a little overexposed. So, I mean, it's an old camera. It's a 12-year-old camera, so you can't really expect too much from it. And, I'm not. I think it's just really cool because using it, I've been able to, almost learn a little bit more about photography. And, it's a good beginner camera. If somebody wanted to start off in photography, taking photos, taking some videos, and just trying their hand at it and getting better, you can actually do that with this kind of camera. It's totally possible. Now, you would need to have some more settings, like being able to change the f-stop and the shutter speed manually. You get more control over the image, but for what you're getting here, you're getting a pretty good deal. Alright, now let's get into the video mode. The video capabilities of this camera are pretty limited, I will say. It shoots 30 frames per second up to 720p. You can also shoot at 15 frames per second. You can have very choppy, old looking footage if you wanted to go that route. Maybe you're trying to shoot more like a Super 8 camera type look. You could go for that. The footage on this thing, I will say, even though it's not the greatest quality, that's kind of the point. You don't shoot video on a camera like this to get really good quality footage. You shoot it to get the look of the footage from this camera. And that's the whole point of using Digicams, is what I've learned. And honestly, I respect what people are doing, and I just think it's so cool because now I feel like I'm part of it. And I feel like anybody can be part of that. If you've got one of these cameras lying around, maybe you've got one in a drawer sitting somewhere in a desk or in a closet or something like that. Dig it out and just play around with it. If you've ever thought about taking photos, do it. You will have fun. I mean, you would be surprised what kind of features are built into some of these old cameras. This actually has image stabilization, and it works pretty good with these photos. The other thing it has is it's got multi-point autofocus, and it's got face detection too built in, and smile shutter, so it can actually detect a smile. And if a person's eyes are closed, it'll take a second shot in order to actually get that person's eyes open. So this camera actually has some really good features. I mean, for it being 12 years old, and we're talking at the time, I think this camera was probably like $100 something. Like, it was less than $200. And now, I mean, if you look online, this camera, like, they're pretty rare, I think, but you could probably get it for like $30 from just, you know, somebody, from some random person, you know, on eBay or Amazon, wherever. You could get one of these for like $30. They're not worth much, but what you can do with them, there's a whole lot, I think. I think there's a lot that's possible. It's crazy. Just go on Amazon, go on eBay, find a little camera like this, maybe even go in like a thrift store or something that it could be selling one of these, and just grab one of these and just start taking pictures. Just fiddle around with it, have fun, and you know what? There's a whole world out there. Start taking some pictures. You may be surprised at what you capture. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My name's Matthew Whitlock. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a great day.